UFC 300 is just a day away, so what better time to start a podcast? So I brought my two friends along, Ryan Galati, Zulfikar Sheikh, and we're going to talk some UFC. I've been an MMA fan myself for since I've been in university. Oh God, it's so long ago now. I'm getting old, but pretty much the McGregor days is when I got into it myself. And just to introduce themselves, I want to swing it over to Ryan first. Tell us about how you got into MMA.
Wow. First of all, love that I'm just Ryan. Zulfi gets to be Zulfikar. That's really cool, but I'm gonna call him Zulfi. Yeah, UFC's end of the day, UFC's just like fun. You know what I mean? A lot of sports you can just like you have to go out there and like hockey, you need to know how offsides work, and baseball, I mean, you may not even know how a strike and ball count works. Like UFC, man, it's two people getting into a cage, sending all out war to each other, no regrets, getting in there 15 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. There's just like nothing really to it. You maybe if you want to be like, oh no, he's shooting a Kimura, really good for you, but you don't need to know that. It's just something you can sit down and just watch two guys give their all into it. As far as when I got into it, I actually have no idea. I'm pretty sure I was just like a kid and just saw that something said UFC Fight Night on like TSN at the time, and I was like, whoa. And I pressed on it and saw a guy get like elbowed in the jaw, and I was like, sweet. So I think that was really just it for me. I couldn't tell you what the fight was, but there wasn't really much else to it. I just think it's a fun time, good entertainment, crazy athletes. But Zulfi, you probably have a better story. You're a bit of a storyteller. Go ahead.
I just find it funny. You saw a TSN and you're like, "There's a fight and it's at night. I'm in. I like this."
But it was.
Yeah, basically it was. They lived up to the hype. But yeah, Zulfi Sheikh. And for me, like how I got into it, honestly, most of my sports stories, how I get into them is just because I got like a jersey or a shirt or something. And I don't know why or when, but I ended up with like this Under Armour GSP shirt, like George St. Pierre. And I just knew he was Canadian. So I was like, yo, this is cool. And obviously, he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. And at the time, I barely knew that. But then after that, did not care about the UFC for the longest time. Honestly, like just wasn't super into it. Just the shirt was cool, kind of knew the guy. And I did kind of get back into it really around the John Jones, Daniel Cormier, like their beef. And when that happened, because that was just so like theatrical and it was so dramatized for all of it. And you kind of do just buy into the beef of it all. But like at the end of the day, like where Ryan mentioned too, that's why I stuck with it now. It's like, you can be super technical. These guys can, all these men and women are super skilled, but 99% of the time, it's who wants it more. Who's gonna get in that cage and be like the like better person that day? Because some days you're not up to it, and that is just so impressive to me. And I love the fact that like sometimes it doesn't matter how much experience you have in an octagon; it's who's gonna want it more that day and who's gonna show out. And that is just so much fun because there's always that factor of surprise in this sport, and that's why I got into it.
Yeah, I think the one-on-one factor is super intriguing. Like, I'm a little bit of a tennis fan, like only for that factor. Basically, I don't even love the sport that much, but I just love like the one-on-one aspect. So that really draws me into UFC. Like, you can really get behind a fighter or get against a fighter, as we'll talk about later. And speaking of like getting behind fighters, I think a big part of UFC origin stories is who are our favorite fighters. And basically, what we're doing today is we are looking between UFC 200 and UFC 300, so the last 100 pay-per-views. And we're just going to go through a few categories. What do you call them? Superlatives?
Yeah, there you go. Good
Awesome.
Yeah,
word.
I've
Good
there you
always
word.
go.
I've always had struggles with that word, so I got it. But so I'm just gonna start right away and say my favorite fighter, especially from those past 100 pay-per-views. I think all of us would probably say GSP if we had to go like favorite all time, but maybe not. But I would have to say Israel Adesanya. Super basic answer. But I remember watching his fight against Rob Wilkinson. I was in university, and it was like when I was really getting into it. And I remember just loving his style, his calm kickboxing style, and I love the way he just like stalked guys in the cage and really just broke them down, especially those early days Israel Adesanya fights. Like he was just such a killer. And I think he really paved the path for a lot of the kickboxing fighters that are excelling nowadays. It kind of changed. We had a huge wrestling phase, and then now I feel like it's a lot more well-rounded, and I feel like Izzy's a big part of that. But yeah, super basic answer for me. Which one you guys have a better answer?
Before answer, I kind of am curious just to like jump on that, Spencer. I let me know if you guys agree or disagree, but I feel like Izzy is like to me like the perfect balance between being able to shit talk really well and being a really skilled and like technical fighter. And the way I say it is like I think Conor McGregor is one of the best shit talkers, promoters in the sport. But like again, in my opinion, his peak wasn't nearly as like long or as high as like a guy like Izzy to me. And then there's guys like Kamaru Usman who like very technical fighter, very good, but like I wouldn't necessarily say I think he's a very great promoter. And in terms of being an exciting guy that people really jump on, like an Izzy has made people do. Do you guys agree with that? I feel like Izzy doesn't get enough love for the fact that he's balanced those things really well.
I think the thing with Izzy that I think like pushes it over the line maybe a little bit is like the idea of how cringy he is almost makes it like better
Yeah.
because you either love the way he talks or you're like, who is this anime twerp that's like somehow good at fighting but trying to talk his shit? Like, there's nothing. I'm not gonna say there's nothing that makes sense about his personality, but when you really think about it, he's a Nigerian man from Australia that loves anime, and something about that actually works into what his character is,
Yeah.
and people either hate it or love it. And like,
He kind of looks like an anime character.
oh, dude, there's been animes like I think made on him now.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
like,
his nickname is a style bender.
yeah, the last
Yeah.
style bender. Everything about him is like this whole anime thing. And I think, for example, like a Colby Covington made his character to be hated. Like he was like, this is,
Yeah.
I know how to do this. He put effort into having himself pushed one way. I think Izzy was effortlessly hated and effortlessly loved. Like there wasn't everyone that like shit talks somehow, even if you want to talk about like the McGregor, like he has the Irish like accent, which is already the fucking best part of his whole character, I'd probably say. But
Yeah.
like beyond that, he like used his shit talking, people fell in love with it, or people hated it, but like he knew what he was doing, it seemed like. With Izzy, it just happened. Like Strickland called him some interesting names. Uh on some like other sides, like other people called him some like interesting names. They became a thing that it was like, oh, people like actually do hate this guy, but then also people do adore him. Like he didn't try for anything, which is weird.
Yeah, I think that's what actually made him so special in his run is that first of all he was fighting more than any champ ever did in UFC. Like he was always on the cards, like every few months pay-per-view headlined by Izzy. So first of all, you have to respect that. Second of all, he's just I don't even love his personality personally. I'm not really one to like a fighter because of how they act outside the cage. I'm very much like into their techniques and how they act in the cage. But I have nothing but respect for him because he's just himself. Like he's very genuine. How
Mhm.
many people have tried to be Conor McGregor and they just can't do it because they're not.
Ian
Conor
Gary.
McGregor's Conor McGregor. Exactly. Well, Ian Gary.
Yeah.
There's probably a few more that just tried it and failed out. But when you can create that much press, negative or positive, just being yourself, I think that's like a super polarizing thing. And I think the sport now is actually missing somebody like that. And I can't wait for the next person to just genuinely grow as a star.
I think I have your next person. It's my
Ooh.
favorite
I think you
fighter.
might.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about.
It's
Yeah.
my favorite fighter. It's goddamn Sugar Sean O'Malley. I love Sugar. I don't care what anyone says about it. I think it makes me sound younger saying like people are like, oh, you're just some like little high school casual. No, I love Sugar. Everything about him is just like weird. The videos he posts of himself training before going on to absolutely smash the faces in of the likes of Cheeto Vera and like Aljamain Sterling. He like uses his hips and power walks, throwing little jabs like this, and it works, and people lose to him. It's so stupid. He made his character so like out, not like he is what he is. He definitely did like a bit more effort for a character, but I think his character is who he is. I think as soon as he started making money, he was like, it'd be really funny, rainbow hair and face tats. Okay, go have the time of your life, I guess. Like, I don't know. I guess it's the Sugar Show. Fun fact about him that I don't know if you know, he has only ever fought on pay-per-views between 200 and 300. He
Oh,
is
really?
I did
never
not know
even
that, but
at the start. He wasn't even on fight nights or anything like that. Only ever been on pay-per-views, even if it was like a prelim, which I guess, it's not pay-per-view. It's not the main card. It's still a pay-per-view, assholes. So yeah, he's only ever fought on pay-per-views. And I think there's a reason for that,
Yeah.
personally.
That
Yes.
sounds like the signs of a star, at least in the making. And I think you're right. In terms of a guy, like I think what Spencer was saying, a lot of was like why he appreciated Izzy is because of that genuine authenticity. It doesn't get more authentic than Sugar Sean showing up in Miami Vice hair and then kicking the shit out of somebody like Vito Vera.
Exactly.
So like I think that definitely does have star potential. See, I feel like not bad, but my answer is definitely not as like exciting as those two guys. Because like if I'm going like OG, like again, John Jones, he was like one of my favorite fighters. He is my favorite fighter all the time, but it's becoming harder and harder to be a fan of John Jones with all the stuff that he constantly keeps getting into. So a guy that like kind of really drew me back into UFC, and he's not even that great of a fighter in my opinion, is Cody Garbrandt. I don't know what it was. It was like his beef with TJ Dillashaw at UFC 207. And that whole thing about like Dillashaw leaving their like training team or whatever, and there was a betrayal and whatnot. I was like getting into that beef, but it was the fact that like the whole lead up to it, it was about how Cody's bringing this like 11-year-old cancer survivor kid with him to the ring and octagon, and it got me into it. I didn't even know fucking TJ Dillashaw. And I was like, yo, fuck this guy. And I was just so into the beef and a bit all, and I was just like siding with Cody, and I was super happy about it. But then TJ Dillashaw kicked Cody's ass, so that kind of took the luster out of it. And I hope that kid wasn't there to see that. But I don't know what it was about Cody. Ever since that moment, I rooted for the guy a lot, and like seeing him come back and fight recently, I was like happy for it, and I was enjoying it. And I'm pretty sure he's on 300 in that card. So like I'm super excited to see what he can do there. And I know I probably don't think he's gonna win, to be honest, but I think it should be a fun fight. And for some reason he has a soft spot for me. I will just always be a Cody Garbrandt fan. I'll always be rooting for the guy no matter what, just because of that one random beef and him bringing an 11-year-old kid and giving them the time of their life.
I honestly love that pick so much. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well,
He's like someone that if I made a list of favorite fighters, he wouldn't be at the top because he hasn't been in winning ways. And I feel like it's easier to have a favorite fighter that is in winning ways. So kudos to you for that. But like, I actually have never met a person that in the Garbrandt versus Dillashaw thing was on Dillashaw's side.
Fair.
I don't, Spencer, I don't know if even you were who you would have been cheering for at the time.
I didn't like either of them.
Yeah, okay, but like still fair. I don't think even in that case, no one was cheering for Dillashaw from what I know. So
Yeah.
Garbrandt, excellent pick.
Yeah.
No, it's
he
a
just
good
seems
pick.
like he seems like a good dude. And I think for me it was like, especially coming off the highs of like the John Jones DC beef, it was a lot of just like really angry dudes who were just mad at each other. Again, very stereotypical idea of what UFC was about, just like almost like meatheads just want to beat the shit out of each other. And Cody and Dillashaw did have their beef, and that is what got me into initially. But then seeing the type of person that Cody was, at least at that time, again, with that kid inspiring him, building that great bond, is like you kind of get to understand that a lot of these guys are characters, but they are really good people behind that as well. And most of the UFC fighters, especially nowadays, have really interesting lives, and they do a lot of really good work as well outside of the UFC.
Thanks. Okay, I'm not gonna push the envelope too heavily, but I do feel like if we're gonna do the little superlatives thing, I can say that word for you, Spencer. To do the little
Thank you.
superlatives thing, we should probably push it on to, I guess, what would be our first superlative? Because I guess favorite fighter technically isn't one. Do you guys want to start with best knockout? I feel like that's usually a pretty good one to go with. Do you want to do?
Yeah.
What are you feeling?
Sure.
Okay. Does that mean I need to start, or should I push the envelope to someone else?
No, kick it off for us.
We're all gonna do best knockout. This is purely in our opinion. There is, you could say what you want if you're listening to this, or I don't know. We're gonna have these hopefully posted on the likes of YouTube and TikTok, and try to make something of it. But feel free to come in and bash us with your insults. We'll take them and we'll hopefully use it to make this podcast bigger. But anyways, I will start with this by saying a pick that I don't think any of you would have. Oh, actually, I guess that doesn't work. If it's a fight night, we have to do pay-per-view ones, don't we?
No, if it's a fight night and if it's worth it, then we'll allow it. So this better be a sick.
Okay, well, you can let me know if it's worth it. If not, I'll say this one, push it around, and then I'll have one by the end. I'll just need to think of it a little bit harder, but I didn't know if this would count, and I put it in there anyway. I have Yair Rodriguez's elbow knockout of the Korean Zombie on UFC Fight Night 139 with 1 second left. It's honestly not even just the knockout for me. It's the fact that like it was an excellent fight. It comes down to like 10 seconds, whatever, 15 seconds left. And Korean Zombie literally like leans into Yair and says like, good fight. Let's finish by chucking knucks. And then like 14 seconds later, he is face down on the canvas from like a flying upward elbow that came out of absolutely nowhere. Commentators didn't even know what hit Korean Zombie. They just knew he was out. It was crazy. I don't know why, but the fact that they agreed to throw hands just made it that much better for me to close out that fight and have him get cut. Like, that's what, like, you could argue like Matt Brown versus Diego Sanchez's elbow, like the Hellbow or whatever. Like, if you've seen that one, that's like my favorite. Like, the Yair Rodriguez one is my favorite elbow of all time. I think that's worth not being a pay-per-view and being a fight night.
100%. Yeah, you're good. You're off the hook.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say, like, getting hit with an elbow of any kind, let alone when it knocks you, it's got to be one of the most vicious ways to get. Am I wrong in saying the elbow has got to be one of the most vicious body parts to be hit with? That shit is so sturdy and rock hard. Anytime you can connect on an elbow, I just think it's night for people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like my dad does not like MMA and UFC. He just thinks it's like barbaric psychoticness. He'll like watch like ground and pound, for example, for a few, and he'll just see a guy like the guy on the ground like covering up and like some fist going in. And he'd be like, oh, like this is what the hell? Like, I'm like, Dad, wait until they throw an elbow, you psycho. Like, you're gonna hate it because the ground and pound elbows look nasty. Always.
I'm glad you that's where the story went. When you started, I thought you were about to say your dad hit you with an elbow or something. That's how you knew that they were bad.
My dad used to see me with
No
the meanest
comment.
elbows.
No comment. Love you, Dad.
Spencer, what about you?
I gotta start by saying Ryan has a mean elbow, but that's a story for a different day. But
I do have a nasty elbow. Sorry, Spencer.
Dave, I can speak from experience, but we'll save that one. Fave knockout. So I tried really hard not to pick this one, and I just couldn't not pick it. I'm gonna go with Leon Edwards over Kamaru Usman. Classic 5th round. And the reason I have to pick it is because I remember it's one of the only fights I remember watching where the knockout and the situation revolving the knockout literally made me like speechless. Like my jaw was hanging. And I remember I was camping with my friends, but I'm such a degenerate. I was watching on my phone around the fire, and they keep asking me, "Oh, how's it going?" I'm like, "Oh, classic Kamaru Usman, snooze fest. He's gonna win a decision." And then all of a sudden, I'm just like freaking out. They have no idea what's going on, and that moment happened. So for me, it's just got to be that one, just because of the I think too what adds to it, the story, and I think what adds to it is John Anik. Is it John Anik? Is it someone's counting him out, and then John Anik's like, "That's not the cloth that he's cut from," and then it happens instantly.
Yeah.
So just the whole moment is like, if it almost feels scripted, and that's like what you look for in a moment in a sport that's not scripted. So for me, it's just it took the cake pretty easily.
That's a good pick, honestly. I actually, as a fan, I can't say I like overly considered that one because I thought of it, I guess, more as a story than like a best knockout, but it was nasty.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's funny because I did actually. That was my answer. I had two answers, and I said in brackets my real answer was Edwards and Usman at 278, and kind of the same stuff you said, Spencer. It was just like, for me, it just felt like insane underdog vibes again with the whole story behind it all and everything, and with the way that fight was going, is that you just knew he needed that. He needed that moment. He needed to put Usman to sleep, and the way it happened was just so clean. And I just love the memes coming out of it. Like, looking this up after, like, Usman, the way he was knocked out, like that, you knew instantly that was going to be a meme. And my favorite one is somebody Photoshop Joe Rogan laying down next to Kamaru Usman with a mic interviewing him. And it's the funniest image you could see if you look it up after. So I'm glad you said it. But like, I had a shithousery type of answer as well. And for me, in terms of why it's my favorite knockout, is because of the stuff that happened after, was Adesanya versus Pereira 2, where Izzy just completely clocks Pereira with that overhand or right hit after a couple punches, and basically immediately turns to Potan's little kid and just be like, hey, look at this. And then, that's after he threw like 3 bows, which was already funny enough as it is. But then he turns and looks at his kid and he's just like, hey, look at this. And then he mocks him by like falling over like his dad did. And Izzy, basically after a fight, he was like, I'm petty. I remember the first time when Alex Pereira beat Izzy, his kid came in and basically did the same thing. And he's like, oh, he was lying next to me. And during this like post fight or whatever, Izzy basically said, like, I was like, fuck you, I'll whoop your little ass if your dad won't do it for you. And again, he's talking to like an 8 to 10-year-old. And I thought that was like, you know what? It almost entirely felt like Izzy's motivation for beating Alex was just to shit talk his kid. And going back to the type of person that Izzy is, and some people love it and hate it, and literally looking that up. There's articles, some were being like, this is fucking hilarious. And there's other articles being like, Izzy is an asshole. So speaking to your guys' point, how he's so polarizing. But for me, it was like, hey man, if your motivation to like beat this insanely like skilled fighter is to talk shit to his child, like I'll take it. I think that's fucking jokes. And it led to an awesome knockout, in my opinion.
I just love that in your favorite fighter thing, you were like, I love that Garbrandt did this nice thing for this 11-year-old. And then best knockout, you're like, I love that Izzy destroyed this child. Like, there's just like no in between in the worlds for you. No, actually, I was like, because I said like mine wasn't a pay-per-view one. That was the pay-per-view one that I was thinking of too. Just the idea that like Izzy baited Pereira a bit too, because he went back to the same position he lost in. It was like, I know what to do this time, bitch. And it worked to absolute perfection. Those are all good picks.
Yeah, that's fun.
I feel like if this went to a poll, I feel like mine would lose only for the reason that yours are better stories.
Mhm.
I just like the Korean Zombie. Good work. Done. I love Korean Zombie though. It makes it sound like I don't like him. I love the guy, but he ate canvas real bad. What should be the next one? We can either do best. Do you want to do best fight and then best post fight interview?
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes most sense. We'll keep it in kind of an orderly fashion.
Yeah.
All right. Best fight. I want Spencer to start this time. Putting you on the spot.
I'm ready. This one again, kind of easy for me because I've watched this fight like 4 times now. I'm not a huge fan of watching fights again. Like usually I have to force myself when I need to when I'm like betting and stuff. But this fight I love watching. Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, UFC 241. It's one of the best fights of all time, especially just because they're two absolute gladiator-looking men, just hucking leather in the cage. Like nothing got me more hyped. Even watching a replay, when I think it's Costa knocks down Romero first, Romero springs back up and then instantly knocks down Costa, and like the crowd is just so into it. I love that fight personally. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Those two guys just go to war for 3 rounds, and then they both had stinkers with Izzy. So yeah, it kind of sucked to be that way. But that fight in itself is amazing. If anyone hasn't seen that fight, go watch it.
I think that one's also the fact that it is like 2 of the scariest men.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, they're both
to
built like
line
brick
up
shit
against.
houses.
Yes. They just like the UFC matchmaking. I can't imagine that one took too much time.
No. When I first saw Yoel Romero, I was like convinced that like this guy has to be one of the best fighters in the world. And like arguably he is, but like I was just like, no, he has to be at like the top. He is a terrifying looking dude. I was literally scared of him, and I never would like you could not convince me with any amount of money to talk shit to that guy.
Have you ever seen the clip of, I think it's from Joe Rogan's like podcast, and they were talking about Yoel Romero, and like he said there was one event that they were doing weigh-ins, and Joe like went over to talk to like the doctor that was dealing with Yoel to make sure that everything was fine. And the doctor like looked at Joe and he was like, he's quite something, eh? And Joe was like, yeah. He's like, the doctor was like, no. Like I've never seen a human built the way that he is. Like his muscle, like the doctor was saying, like his muscle tissue, like everything. The doctor was like, I've never seen anything like it. He like almost seems like a mutant, and it's very true.
Yeah, that's even more terrifying.
And it's just the fact too that like Yoel Romero shit talked Michael Bisping by saying "I love you" from the middle of the cage. Like he's just a weird guy. If you've never seen that, go search it because it's very strange.
Well, does he not also, when he beats Luke Rockhold, like start kissing him on the forehead, and Luke Rockhold's like, get out of here?
He's just an absolute freak.
Yeah, he's had some absolute bangers with Whitaker too, by the way. Like he's had some bangers back in the day.
Yeah, that's a good one. Zulfi, you want to go next, or do you want me to take it?
I can go. Why not?
Okay.
I got. This is one of my favorite. This again, I want a best fight because I think it is my favorite fight of all time, if not just at least in my top 3. But Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk at UFC 248. This is like the personification of an absolute brawl. And like watching it back, like there is so much like technical work in it, and they do a lot of grappling. They go down at times, but it's just at the end of the day, it's just like, again, who wants it more? We're just gonna kick the piss out of each other. And Dana White's even said it's arguably one of the best fights ever. In my opinion, it's at least the best women's fight ever. And I think it's just like these two women just knew they were going to go out there for like one of the best battles, is who's going to come on top. And I think everything about it, just watching it, like your just jaws dropped in. Like I don't know who in that crowd couldn't just stand up after and applaud it. I don't think anyone was mad that it was a split decision after, because like how do you like you don't want any of these women feeling like they lost. Or again, it ended up being Weili Zhang's way, but like you felt like both of them were winners just for the absolute warrior effort that they put up, and that welt on Yoon Jae-cheok's head after looking like a freaking alien. It was insane, and like I've never seen, like, obviously with like knockouts and stuff, like right after there's like they're memed and there's social media and they're viral and stuff, but like during the fight while it's happening there's posts going crazy about Yoon Jae-cheok's head, and just like the meme and viral sensation of it all was happening in real time during this epic fight, and it just built into the whole like allure of it for me. And I thought that was insane because you don't really see that happening like mid fight really unless it's something controversial. So I thought that was so cool. And again, like just two women just completely showing out. And I think for a lot of people, especially more casual fans, it was like their kind of moment to be like, yeah, the women's side is pretty legit as well. So I thought like anytime you can have that kind of moment for people, I think is super important too. And I just think this is one of the coolest fights of all time. And for me, like I almost immediately thought of this one because that's the one where I think like that's a brawl. These two people went at it, and I left so satisfied with that fight.
That's a also excellent pick. And I honestly thought of that one. Like I didn't pick it, but I thought of that one only because the image of Jacek's head is lodged in my head. Like when you think of best fight, you just see that picture, and it's like the shocked look in her eyes, like looking around when her head is just like Squidward shape. Like it doesn't make any sense how she wasn't like dead on the canvas. And they're like two of the nicest women to fight in the women's side of the UFC. Like they're both such sweethearts. It's absolutely insane. For mine, I have multiple picks, but I'm going to get through them really quickly so we can at least get into the post-fight interview one. I will say I'll give two honorable mentions. One of them want to do a bit of Canadian pride. I do want to give, I've talked to him before, a great guy, great fighter. I do want to give Sari Sidi versus Ramon Taveras on the most recent card in Canada in Toronto some plaudits. Nice. They just like, no one knew what to expect. No, like they knew it was a contender series fight in the past. They went in there and they threw to the wind. Sari, I think, was like a face full of blood at the end of the first round, but that did not stop him in the slightest. Ramon was just like, it was weird. It was a Sidi. It was one of those like crazy fights where like Sidi was clearly like the guy that was trying to take it like more technical, just like land shots, get a little bit going. Taveras was just swinging for the fences anytime he came near. And that always makes for a barn burner. The other honorable mention I wanted to give, because I just can't pick best fight because there's so many good ones. This one, if there was a superlative for best round, because this fight only went briefly into the second round, Thiago Santos versus Jimmy Manua, however you want to say it. If you guys haven't ever watched that fight, give yourself 5 minutes to sit down and watch the first round. It is the most chaotic collision of freight trains I've ever seen in my life. The 5 minutes that go by is strictly Thiago Santos and Jimmy Manua just saying, all right, your turn to beat the shit out of me. Now it's my turn. And it's just neither of them give out. It's a shame that it only lasted like 40 seconds into the second round. But even the 40 seconds of the second round were nuts. There's like flying knees. There's spinning kicks from Thiago Santos, who, by the way, also gets entered into that terrifying fighter thing with a giant sledgehammer on his chest. Weird guy. But I think my best fight does have to go to Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler on UFC 268. Yeah. Only for the reason that I despise when there's a fight that people work up and are like, oh, this is going to be like such a brawl, such a collision, and it doesn't live up to it. This one, like, had the highest expectations possible and went beyond. Yeah. Like, it's one thing to say that it was like a great fight, expectations were like matched. I don't even think that can be the case, because before the fight, they were ready for a war. After the fight, Michael Chandler was posting videos of ice packs on his face and his children couldn't recognize him. I was like, you're insane. It just worked out in the best way possible. I do think, as good as your answers are, that's my superlative. That's what I have to give it to, because I just always think about it. It's a heater.
Yeah, it was right up there for me. I was choosing between that actually and Romero Costa, so that's a great pick.
Yeah, those are also just two brawlers.
Well, it's also the fact that like the people that you guys said, as great of fights as they had, there are some weaker ones in their career. Gaethje and Chandler have only put on like
Yeah.
fire
Yeah.
performances.
That's fair.
But do we want to quickly do best post-fight interview and then see what happens? Because for everyone listening, we are on a Zoom and the time left thing has popped up. So we'll have to figure that out.
Well, what would you guys rather do? Favorite post-fight interview? Because we can talk about that anytime, or or do you want to get to hating a little bit?
We can. How about this? How about we mix it? Like, if like one of us has a more passionate answer for post fight, we can do that. But like, we can choose which one we want to do. You want to do the happiest defeat? You can say that, or you can do post fight interview.
All right, because I don't really have a good post-fight interview, so that works for me.
I'll do post-fight interview.
I love post fight interview too.
Oh
Like,
shit! Okay.
we might have the same
okay.
answer to.
No, we don't.
Ryan.
No, we
Okay.
don't.
Ryan, you go first.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. First of all, I'll preface it by saying the happiest defeat thing we were talking about is just a fully hater idea we came up with, and just it's the fight that you watched and the guy that you lost. When they lost, you stood up and just gave a big fuck yeah, like you don't even care who won. You just saw them lose and you were like yeah. But my best post-fight interview, this could actually have two separate contenders because of how good they've both been. But I'm giving it to the first viral sensation, Renato Moicano post-fight interview. Because,
that was my answer.
Yeah, it is so good. I don't know if you've seen it, Zulfi. I don't know if anyone's listening and you haven't seen it. Moicano is one of the funniest guys in the UFC. And the fact he's Brazilian makes it that much better. He didn't even let Joe Rogan introduce him and just took the mic and just started screaming, Joe Rogan, I fucking love you. New York, let's go. Gets everyone hyped up. And then gives this crazy speech at the end saying he belongs in the rankings because he took a fight on 4 days' notice when he was eating steak and drinking beer in Brazil. And then he just ends it with the iconic line of Moicano wants money. And I was like, amazing. Good enough for me. That's the brand. I don't even have to like say much else about it. Just go search either of Moicano's interviews. The one where he said that his fucking 70-year-old dad just had a kid. So he's going to go home and get his wife pregnant tonight. What the hell?
Yeah.
Good for you. But everything about it is great. I'll just end it there because I'll get way too excited before I talk about Moicano. He's fighting soon and I can't wait. Zulfi,
He fights tomorrow.
Yeah, actually,
he does.
Oh, God.
He does.
Well, yeah, fuck.
Okay, I'll go quick. I'm glad we didn't have the same answers, but for me, this answer came up right away. Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov at UFC 229. And it was a great card because Khabib McGregor, but right after Derek Lewis in that fight, he gets, first of all, an insane knockout, which I think I kind of forgot in all of this with Volkov. He needed a knockout, and he was able to get it with a crazy overhand right after a left jab. And then after he takes his shorts off, he's still in his boxers, and Joe Rogan, without hesitation, just asked him, like, hey, Derek, why'd you take your pants off? My balls was hot. And then my favorite part of it all is that Joe Rogan, I understand. doesn't miss a beat, like goes full professional. I understand, and then continues with it. And another part I forgot is I thought that was it. That I loved it just for that. My balls is hot. And then but after that, Rogan asked Lewis like, "How'd you find the energy or like to be able to get the KO?" And I didn't remember this part, but he was like, I almost forgot. But before the fight, Donald Trump called me and said, I got to knock this Russian motherfucker out because they're making him look bad in the news, him and Putin and shit. But fuck what they talking about, USA in this hoe. Like, he legit said that, and I completely forgot about it. And there's just so much more to it that I didn't even remember. But like later, when they asked him about being a championship contender, he's like, I don't want to talk about that. I need to sit my black ass down and do some cardio first before I talk about championships. And the last thing he did that, again, just cherry on top, is like, in a couple weeks, maybe I'm going to come on your show, Joe, and we're going to smoke some weed together and talk. That's how he ends it. He's just a class act. And the funniest part of it, he got a fucking Manscaped deal out of it for my balls was hot. So he made some money off of it too. So like, I don't get how you get more iconic than that. I fucking loved it.
No, that is
yeah, for sure. I'm actually glad we did it this way because I had written down Money Moicano and then balls was hot. So
yeah,
you guys covered both my answers.
Let's go.
But I am not gonna piss Zulfi off a little and give him my favorite loss here. You ready?
Okay, it's Pereira, isn't it?
No, it's the UFC 235. Cody Garbrandt.
Okay.
Pedro Munoz. Cody Garbrandt. I just remember, and honestly, it has nothing. This is gonna sound so petty of me. Maybe this is why I like Izzy. But my friend loved Cody Garbrandt. I didn't think he was that good, and like it was like I was watching it with him, so like he was talking so much shit. Cody was talking so much shit. I was like, I just hope he gets knocked out. And then I didn't really know who Pedro Munoz was at the time, but I remember knowing that he had heavy hands. I was like, I knew about him. So then when he caught him with that left hook in the pocket, I did get quite happy. And it doesn't have anything to do with Garbrandt. So
Yeah, fair.
What about that
it's just
11-year-old? What about the nice
Yeah.
kid? Come on,
I just
Spencer,
didn't
you
care
piece
at the
of shit.
time. I didn't care
Nah,
at the
Spencer,
time.
you're canceled. Spencer, you're canceled.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm more with Izzy and beating up kids, but
Yeah,
What?
fair. In fairness,
Oh, he
Izzy
did-
didn't
wait, he
actually
did-
hurt the child. He did
Oh.
not hurt the child. Just to
Did you
preface
just say that Izzy's a child beater? That is crazy. Canceled.
Yeah, I
mean,
wasn't
as
supposed to
far
say
again,
that.
again, we don't know, but we assume he's not. Okay,
Oh,
we
no.
have about a minute left before we wrap up. Really quickly, you don't even have to explain it, but what was your happiest defeat, Ryan?
Nate Diaz beating Conor McGregor.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I do like that one.
I'm
Mine
gonna
was
piss someone off with that, but
yeah, mine was John Jones beating the shit out of Daniel Cormier a second time, and Daniel Cormier was really sad after. Now I love DC because he's a great guy, but at the time I was giggling when he lost because I was a John Jones fan.
Was that the one where he kicked his leg out?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
kicked
that's
him,
great.
and DC was like, "It's not a rivalry. He beat me twice." But yeah, I think we have just really quick to wrap up. Everyone want to just shout out their socials and just say goodbye?
I'll start. You can follow me on Instagram, which will be a really uninteresting process at who's Ryan Galati. I don't know, just try to spell it the best you can. If you want to follow me on Twitter, where I post some more, I guess, slightly interesting things, but not really at the same time. I'd not sell myself well. At Ryan Galati 1.
Spencer?
I'm at Spencer Kloss on X at Spencer_Kloss CLOSS, and that's where you can find me. I like to talk shit.
Sweet. At Zulfi_Sheikh. Follow us. Let us know what you think. This is the first episode. We love you guys. We'll be back after UFC 3.